Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay, and I'm a naval historian. And over the next few weeks, I actually gonna shift over to maritime historian because I'm gonna, for this month of April, go over the story of Titanic, which I know everyone has heard, but I'm just gonna give you my take on it, and also how I would approach this in a classroom setting, so that way you know what aspects I think are important to the story and what I do not. Um, and this week we're going to start with part one, and it looks like it's going to be a four-parter. And this is just going to cover the background and construction and fitting out of Titanic and get you to Southampton in April of 1914. So, starting with that background, as you can see here, this is Titanic along with her sister ship Olympic. And Titanic was actually the second ship in the Olympic class uh, line of ocean liners. So, White Star Line's uh, chairman, J. Bruce Ismay, wanted larger ships to capitalize on the White Star's reputation as the most luxurious and comfortable ships on the Atlantic. Uh, at this time, White Star ships were popular among the rich and upper class, and White Star also had a reputation for being uh, the best ocean liner for the price amongst the immigrant population. Third class accommodations on White Star ships we're pretty much almost on par with second class on other liners. So you can see why these Olympic class ships got a lot of were very popular amongst the rich, as they were outclassing other ships of their time in first class. These ships were also intended to generate more than enough profit to pay for the expansion of the entirety of J.P. Morgan's International Mercantile Marine. So, White Star Line, up from its founding in the mid 19th century all the way up to 1902, was an independent company. However, due to some rapid expansion, even though she was making profit, she was also running into a little bit of debt. And J.P. Morgan was, of course, the Robin Baron financier that he was just trying to bring American dominance and into the very much British controlled overseas trade. So J.P. Morgan, being J.P. Morgan, acquired White Star Line into the International Mercantile Marine by a hostile takeover in 1902. And that hostile takeover was the International Mercantile Marine looked at White Star's 1900 profits and paid 10 times that much to the shareholders. So that's going to be important to note in a later episode. But White Star was, while a British ocean liner, had in 1902 become a subsidiary of an American holding company. Now, Olympic and Titanic were both laid down in 1908 at Harland and Wolff Shipyard in Belfast, Ireland. Uh, although, as we'll see in a little bit, Titanic had a few key differences that did distinguish her a little bit from her older sister. I will say Harland and Wolff still is in business in Belfast and still turning out ships to this day. As you can see, this photo is of Titanic and her keel. So these ships would eventually displace 52,000 tons in case were 882 feet long and had a beam of 92 feet wide. Basically, the only difference between her and an Iowa class battleship such as USS Missouri, they pretty much had to weigh the same. Uh, Iowa class has a beam that's 16 feet wider, and they were about the same length. Um, Now, both these ships did come with a cruising speed of 21 knots, which is 24 miles an hour for those of you who haven't sailed, and a max speed of 23 knots, or 26 miles an hour. At this time, when she was designed and built, that's actually about, she was at full speed. The Olympic and Titanic would actually be just a couple of knots faster than pre-dreadnought. battleship and about on par with Dreadnought herself. And I should also let you know that uh, uh, these Olympic class ships were never intended to compete for the blue ribbon like uh, Cunard's Mauritania and pictured here Lusitania, but they were built for comfort. Since I would say, while these ships did have two standard triple reduction steam engines, uh, they were one of the first ships to incorporate a steam turbine outside of the Royal Navy. Uh, Clearly, Ismay, the head of Harlan Wolff, Mr. Peary, and of course later the designer Andrews, were impressed by an unscheduled demonstration of Turbina at the Spithead Naval Review, which and HMS Dreadnought herself was being powered by turbines by this time. While both ships were better than 95% similar, after a few months of Olympic being in operation, there were a few changes made uh, based on these voyages. And this is key to note in case you come up with any Titanic deniers. Uh, the, Namely, the forward half of A deck's promenade was enclosed. So A deck is that first deck below the boat deck, and as you can see in this photo of Titanic off her starboard forward quarter, you can see that about half of that A deck is enclosed, where the rear half is unenclosed. And that was they learned through the fall shipping season on the North Atlantic that spray was getting up into that part of the promenade, and it just really wasn't used when you have a boat deck right above it. And that also allowed a few of the state first class staterooms to be enlarged, as well as a couple of lounges. And additionally, the passenger lounges, saloons, dining rooms were decorated differently than Olympic, both to give the passengers a different experience during their voyage. And it was by that time, and still is, a standard practice. So if you go on to either Royal Caribbean or Carnival or even Disney cruise ships of the same class, they will be decorated differently just to maintain her uniqueness. And now, I should note that at this point, Olympic was able to begin her career on schedule in 1911, but during that year, uh, under command of Edward Smith, she had a couple of incidents which caused Titanic's fitting out a maiden voyage to be delayed. First is the infamous HMS Hawk incident in September 1911, um, where as both HMS Hawk and Olympic were exiting Spithead, uh, which are not, yeah, the Spithead in getting out of uh, Southampton to go to where they needed to go. Um, there's a unique hydrological effect that happens. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but when a larger vessel weight can essentially suck in a smaller vessel closer to her, and that actually happened, and it caused HMS Hawk's concrete ram to enter uh, into ram into Olympic in her starboard aft quarter, and causing some damage there. Uh, it specifically opened up a few cabins to the ocean and had caused one of the propeller shafts to be damaged severely, so much that it had to be that the easiest way to get Olympic back to sea was to take that propeller shaft off Titanic and put it into Olympic. Now, of course, the Royal Navy did do an inquiry into this incident, and the Royal Navy, being the Royal Navy, especially under Admiral Sir Charles Wilson, or yeah, Charles, no, excuse me, Admiral Sir Arthur Wilson at this time as First Sea Lord, they didn't want to pay any of that because they were trying to build up as many dreadnoughts as they could to challenge the Germans. Uh, the Royal Navy conveniently found that Olympic and White Star was liable for that. Now, again, there was one other incident that slightly delayed Titanic, and so that was in late February 1912, while on a return voyage to England. Olympic lost one of the propeller blades on her off of her in mid voyage, and so again, it was quicker and easier to pull the one of the screws off of Titanic and put it onto Olympic. And then finally, occurring during the early spring of 1912 in the United Kingdom, there was a coal strike. And this forced White Star to rearrange all her timetables to maximize both coal and passenger occupancy, which favored the larger ships of the White Star's fleet. Specifically, they were trying to use their smaller ships as little as possible and rely primarily on Olympic, Titanic, and the slightly older but still fairly new, considering how long ships are built these days, Oceanic, which was only about 8 or 9 years old at that time. So Titanic's fitting out was completed on March 31st of 1912, and her sea trials were conducted in the Irish Sea on April 2nd of 1914. As she was a second in her class, the sea trials focused on Titanic's ship handling capabilities and not safety equipment or strength of the ship. And this was standard practice at that time. Additionally, the Olympic class in the original construction blueprints were actually deemed to be safer than what the British Board of Trade regulations mandated and had more lifeboats than the regulations required. So, upon completing her sea trials and receiving her license from the British Board of Trade, Titanic sailed to Southampton to be loaded with and receive passengers, cargo, and mail for her maiden voyage to depart on April the 10th, 1912. Well, with that, that's all I got for this week. Next week, we will discuss the voyage and sinking of the Titanic. This is a part of the story which I think everyone knows is best, especially if you've seen James Cameron's epic Titanic, and or just been on Discovery Channel, National Geographic Channel, anytime in early April of any year. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please like if you did, subscribe if you haven't yet. Share this with anyone who you think is interested in this. If you're going to leave a comment, please be kind and respectful down below, and I will be back next week to continue this story. Have a good day. Bye bye.